Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Identity Talks. Today, we're going to be talking about healthcare with SailPoint's AVP of Healthcare, Matthew Radcliffe. Matthew, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Hannah. How are you today?
Doing great. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Austin, and I'm excited for this conversation today.
I am as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, so let's just jump right in. You've been in healthcare for a long time, which is why we have you here. And many industries, as we know, have been affected by COVID, but none really more so than healthcare. So from a technology perspective, how has the pandemic affected how healthcare organizations think about identity?
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. I mean, here's the reality. If you step back a couple of years, right, healthcare organizations would think of identity as, hey, this is a great productivity tool and automation tool, and when we get the time and budget, we'll get around to doing that, right? I mean, it was kind of thought of as a tool of convenience. I think more of the forward-looking healthcare organizations were proactively investing into identity governance solutions, but there were still quite a number of healthcare organizations, I would say sitting on the sidelines and thinking about the right time to inject identity governance. But the fact is when COVID-19 came upon all of us with really, it was a surprise for everyone. I think in a lot of cases, healthcare organizations were caught a bit off guard, right? All of a sudden, they had this large influx of patients, and their current staffing couldn't support the treatment of the volume of patients they were seeing. So in many cases, healthcare organizations were forced very quickly with little notice. They had to onboard lots more physicians, contracted nurses, in many cases, even volunteer nurses, contractors. And then in parallel, a lot of the traditional staff that was on site was being moved off site of the hospital, really to protect them. And essentially non-essential personnel were moving off site, and now all of a sudden they needed remote access. They needed permissions that they typically weren't granted. So for those organizations that didn't have solutions like SailPoint in place, this actually became a very painful exercise. With no notice, they were provisioning thousands of identities literally on a daily basis. The great news is what we heard from a lot of our current healthcare customers was, hey, SailPoint, if we didn't have you, we couldn't even imagine how we would have managed through this process. We have a couple of customers in the New York City area that were literally managing up to 15,000 new clinicians within a 3 to 5 week period. This in a normal day-to-day operation would have been a very painful task, but because they had SailPoint, they were very quickly and effectively able to onboard these new clinical caregivers, quickly give them access to the clinical systems they needed to treat patients, and really get them quickly to focus on treating patients rather than trying to figure out how to give them that access. And on the other side, those that were removed off-site, leveraging our tools, they were very quickly able to update role models to now allow those users to have remote access permissions and other security permissions that typically that role would not have granted them. So it had the pandemic for sure was nothing that any of us wanted. It put quite a burden on a lot of the IT organizations. But in healthcare, it really put a spotlight on the value that our solutions provide to really, a lot of national large healthcare organizations.
Yeah, that certainly scales it for us. So I guess my next question for you then is this a permanent shift? Is this something that's impacting the future of identity?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to look at it. First of all, we all keep talking about the new norm, right? And the new norm is we are going to have a larger percentage of staff work off-site, right? They've now determined that, hey, this business model is not necessarily all that bad. There is some population of resources that can work from home or work from a remote workplace. So they are seeing benefits in that long-term strategy, and with that, you need stronger security solutions. You need stronger governance solutions to help administer those permissions and make sure that you have a tight wrapper around controlling access from a remote workforce. The other aspect of that is coming out of COVID, all these users were very rapidly brought on board. Those organizations that did not have SailPoint or a solution like SailPoint, they really now have to kind of untie that web, right? All these people were quickly brought on board. They were given access, and in many cases, without a lot of thought in terms of the role they would serve, what kind of access they needed. Their goal was, hey, give them access, get them treating patients. But now they still have compliance mandates that they have to remain compliant to. So now they have to unwind that access, try to figure out who did we give access to, what access needs to be remediated or terminated, and then clean all of that up. And we actually see that process is going to take 12 to 18 months in many cases. So we're seeing the need to actually accelerate for those customers that were either evaluating a solution like SailPoint or had it in a future plan. They're actually accelerating their acquisition of SailPoint to actually help automate that get the visibility in terms of who they granted access to, clean up that access, remediate inappropriate access, and then really create an automated process moving forward to manage those identities. So we believe that there is going to be a lasting impact. And in a lot of cases, our prospective customers have communicated that, this really put a spotlight on some gaps we have, and they're accelerating their identity governance strategies moving forward. So we see the need for SailPoint actually growing exponentially within the provider space.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That was great information. And until next time, this has been Identity Talks.